Nebraska had their eyes on the target and hit the bullseye this week with the commitment of four-star in-state tight end Carter Nelson. Is Nelson's commitment another sign that something special is brewing in Lincoln, and that something special is the class of 2024?
From LA to Piscataway, all Big Ten all year long. This is Big Ten 10.
Boy, Nebraska and Matt Rhule are really investing, right? They weren't kidding. They're really investing into the tight end position, and this is a position that Nebraska is really going to emphasize in their offense going forward. You look at the transfer acquisition of Eric Gilbert, right? Talented guy at LSU and at Georgia, very highly touted coming out of high school a few years back. And then in the class of 2024, you keep Carter Nelson at home. This was a target. This was a guy that was someone that was high on Nebraska's priority list to keep in the state of Nebraska. They really wanted him wearing the big red uniform, playing in the Big Ten Conference for the in-state program. Now, the commitment of Carter Nelson, right? Four-star kid, top 100 player in the country. Some services have him as high as maybe a top 60, maybe close to a top 50 player in the country. Other services kind of towards the back end of the top 100. No matter where he ranks, having a top 100 kid racking up top 100 kids, as many as you can get, definitely a good thing. Definitely a thumbs up for Matt Rhule, Marcus Satterfield, and this entire coaching staff. Now, the big thing that I really want to start with in this breakdown of the class of 2024 for Nebraska is their in-state recruiting prospects, because Carter Nelson was one of the biggest recruiting prospects inside of the state of Nebraska. With this commitment, Nebraska now has commitments from the top 4 players in the state of Nebraska. It's the second consecutive year that they have reeled in the top player in the state of Nebraska. Last year, Matt Rhule was able to keep Malachi Coleman in the city of Lincoln. Now, I've heard this in the comments before. I've heard tweets, I've heard it said on many different areas online. How can Nebraska be an 8 to 10 win team? How can they really improve their standing in the Big Ten recruiting the state of Nebraska? Well, let me lay it down for you. First of all, I want to say this. If you want to be an 8, you want to be a 9, you want to be a 10-win team, a lot of those skill position players, a lot of those players that really make a difference, that really pop, yeah, they got to be from the Floridas, from the Texas, and maybe take advantage of that Calibraska connection as well. And Matt Rhule has been wielding his Texas connections as well during recruiting. But you can win laying the foundation and creating depth with kids from the state of Nebraska. You know, when Matt Rhule took this job, we saw him active on Twitter, posting pictures from towns and high schools all across the state of Nebraska, because he knows what this state really has to offer, and laying the groundwork and creating depth from kids within this state is key to the success at the University of Nebraska. Now, here's generally what you're getting from kids in the state, right? You're getting 2 to 4 4-star players every year in the Lincoln area, in the Omaha area. Occasionally you get a kid from outside of the metro area. For example, Carter Nelson from Ainsworth, Nebraska, closer to South Dakota than it is to Lincoln. Let me just put it this way. It takes 2.5 hours to get to the nearest Walmart from Ainsworth, Nebraska. Yeah, it's that kind of a Nebraska town. But you get a lot of 3-star players as well. You get offensive line, you get defensive line, you get those big farm boys in the state of Nebraska. You build the trenches with a lot of those 3-star players, and you get those 4-star skill players in the Lincoln area, in the Omaha area. I'll get to some of those players in the class of 2024 here in just a minute. You build off of that, and then you go into Texas. Maybe you go into California, you go into Florida, you kind of go into these other areas where you really got the track guys, you got the speed guys, you got all the guys that you can really build and really take your program talent-wise to the next level. Another thing that I want to mention is that Matt Rhule is a guy kind of like PJ Fleck, right? That's another guy. He has drawn a border around the state of Minnesota, and he's keeping those kids in state. Okay, Matt Rhule has said it. He wants this to be a developmental program. You want to create your base of kids that want to be here, kids that want to stay here, and you want to develop them from 3-star talent into 5-star talent. Let's take a look right now at the future, maybe the future of the Nebraska passing game. When you think of a Big Ten offense, and you think of passing attacks in a Big Ten offense, you think of where all these players are across the country, all of those great wide receivers that end up at Ohio State, Florida, Texas, California, like I mentioned before. The future of the Nebraska passing game, as this 2024 class reflects, could run right through I-80 and could run right through the state of Nebraska, right? They've got a 3-star commit in Daniel Kalen, who a lot of people think is maybe the future at the quarterback position, right? You're probably going to have Jeff Sims for the next 2 years. Daniel Kalen may be ready when he's a sophomore. He's kind of a high 3-star guy right now. You'd like a look at 4-star wide receiver Davion Hall, plays high school football with Daniel Kalen. So there's going to be a built-in chemistry a little bit if they play together. He's a 4-star wide receiver. I mentioned Carter Nelson as well. There's your quarterback, there's your wide receiver, and there's your tight end. All Nebraska kids, and like I said, with the interior of the offensive line, with the defensive line, they're going to continue to build with some of these other Nebraska kids, but they're also going to be able to bring in kids from other areas to really bolster the skill positions, really bolster some positions, especially on defense. They brought in a 4-star safety in this 2024 class from the state of Texas. So it's a combination of locking down Nebraska and figuring out what Nebraska has to offer and building on that to really make yourself a really good Big Ten program. Now, here's the thing. There's a lot of excitement about this class, and it definitely looks like Matt Rhule is laying the foundation. But we've seen this before from the Big Red, right? We saw this under Scott Frost. We saw top 5 classes in the Big Ten. We saw top 25 to top 30 classes nationally. We've seen this before. Why can't it happen again? Can it happen again? What happened with Scott Frost? Could it happen with Matt Rhule? Here's the thing with Scott Frost, right? He brought in a lot of these kids, these 4-star kids, high 3-star kids. A lot of times a year later, 2 years later, these kids would end up entering the transfer portal. For one reason or another, things didn't work out, and maybe it's because of who was leading the program. I think we found that out. Since Scott Frost has been let go, some things have come out that, well, it makes sense why there were departures from Lincoln. Also, Scott Frost and this coaching staff was not great at developing, right? Certain positions did not develop very good under the Scott Frost regime. Matt Rhule has to reverse. He has to flip the script on those two things. Like I said earlier in the video, you got to build a culture. You got to build those Nebraska kids and the kids that come from outside the state, from other parts of the country, kids that want to be here, kids that want to be developed at the University of Nebraska. Matt Rhule, in his comments, hasn't, he talks about the transfer portal and he kind of shakes it off a little bit. He's invested in recruiting. He's invested in laying a foundation and building things at Nebraska. That's what I believe also is building a good football program. You've seen programs within the Big Ten and outside the Big Ten that have invested heavy into the transfer portal. You can hit a home run like Kenneth Walker at Michigan State, but then you can flip back and go 5-7. There's a lot of inconsistencies when it comes to the transfer portal. Hard to establish a culture, hard to establish an identity when you're constantly bringing in 15 to 20 new guys and kind of undermining your recruits and bringing them in to those spots over those recruits. Matt Rhule has said it before. He's going to say it again. Building a foundation in recruiting and developing them from 3-star high school talent to 5-star NFL talent. It's very big. The development piece is very big. Things are looking really, really good right now for Nebraska. but can it continue into the future?
Thanks for watching Big Ten TED, where it's all Big Ten all year long. Make sure to like the video to spread the word of Big Ten TED to the masses, and subscribe to the channel for updates on Big Ten content that drops every day.